5. Incredible growth. And Wall Street is latching onto that this morning and asking the question, does that services growth translate into growing margins as we go into the second half of this year? The stock has lagged the S&P 500 so far year to date. Wall Street wanted to see a beat, but they wanted to ask, how did Apple beat? And this was broad-based growth. Is this the turning point for the stock, John?
Ed Loveday on the West Coast. Ed, thank you. What a move. Wedbush raising its price target to 185 after the results and writing the following. Apple is essentially the Tom Brady of the tech world. The skeptics will continue to say the best is in the rearview mirror, yet Brady just won his 7th championship. And Apple just reported its most robust quarter in roughly 3 years. Dan is back with us, and I'm pleased to say we've sorted out the technical issues. Dan Ives, let's start right here. Revenue records in each geographic segment, double-digit growth in each product category. The stock is only up 1%, and it's done basically nothing all year, Dan. Why?
I think it goes back to what you were talking about, worries that this is as good as it gets. And I think that creates the opportunity, in our opinion, because these are the same skeptics at $1 trillion, at $2 trillion, and now what we believe going on its way to $3 trillion. This is the super cycle that's going to continue to play out for the next 12 to 18 months.
But Dan, what drives the capitulation? Let me just jump in, mate. What drives the capitulation? Because we've been talking about this since really when the beginning of September, pricing in this cycle, and we continue to get these upside surprises, and the market's still responding. So from your perspective, Dan, what is the catalyst for capitulation on this as good as it gets story, which is always hovering around the Apple name?
Sure. I think the capitulation really starts over the next quarter or two, because based on all of our Asia checks, we're showing iPhone 13. It's about 25% stronger than iPhone 12 in terms of initial orders coming out of the gates in Asia. Put that all together with services. I mean, it's really that as well as the broader product cycle. It's the trifecta that I believe ultimately launches us to $185, potentially $200 plus stock. But that's why on this name, the haters are going to continue to hate. They're going to have to continue to prove it. But that's why I brought up the Brady analogy, because this is just one. It's an underestimation of the monetization that's going on in Cupertino. And right now, this is just a gift for the bulls as they continue to, I believe, underappreciate the overall growth story.
Well, Dan, let's talk about the buyback too. Can you give me some context perspective on just how big this is? Another 90 billion on top of the what, north of 500 billion that they've already done since 2012. Just how big is this?
I mean, look, I think this, it goes back to the cash neutral policy that Apple's talked about. They're going to continue to do these massive buybacks, as well as we believe acceleration of M&A. And it's important because it just shows right now, if you look at the cash generation and what's happening across the board, this is just what I believe is the next stage of the growth story, but also the cash flow and buyback story that's going to continue into the next year, which is why we believe this is going to be a $3 trillion market cap, even though right now it's skeptical peak earnings. Remember, the same that are talking about peak earnings, it's not sustainable today, those are the same bears that were in their caves a year ago saying don't buy Apple because of the growth and the super cycle is not real.
Yep, and now the doubters also talking about the potential of a chip shortage damaging things too. Now, Apple have put a number on it, 3-4 billion maybe. The Mac, iPads, sales could be constrained because of the chip shortage. Now, as you know, Dan, 3-4 billion for a company that's churning out $90 billion on any given quarter is not going to be a big deal. But as you look across the tech complex right now, Dan, do you see that chip shortage generating some execution risk for the companies that you cover, away from Apple, maybe the Teslas of this world, Dan?
No doubt it's thrown a fly in the ointment. And we've seen that across auto, across software, and just broader semis and tech. But I believe that's something that's already factored into numbers. And I think as we start seeing moderate into the second half, I think bark's worse than the bite. Pent-up demand starts to come through. And I think a lot of these numbers, ultimately get crushed relative to street as these companies execute. So I believe it's something that's been properly factored in. But even when you look at Apple, go back 3 months ago, you were talking guidance, everyone thought it was conservative. They just absolutely crushed it. And I think we're going to continue to see the trend. That's why we believe by year end, we're looking at 16,000 NASDAQ.
Dan Ives with some big numbers and looking for some all-time highs on the NASDAQ and on Apple too. Dan, it's good to catch up, sir, as always. My apologies about the technical connection a little bit earlier. Dan Ives there of Wedbush. 32 buys, 10 holds, 2 sells on Apple. Your median 12-month price target, 157.79. Wedbush and Dan Ives at 185. Raymond James and Chris Caso also at 185 with an upgrade to that price target. They are the most bullish on the street. Stellar numbers from Apple, and this stock just is not responding. Abby has more. Hey, Abby.
Hi there, John. Well, sector-wise, it's interesting what you're talking about with Apple because it's weighing to some degree on the tech sector, which is overall higher but not among the top. Nonetheless, we do have record highs for the S&P 500. So most of the sectors for the S&P 500, 10 of 11, are higher. The top one, communication services, up 2.4%. That's Facebook. Then, interestingly, followed by energy and financials with yields higher, oil higher. But take a look at tech, up just 0.3%. This because Apple is off of its highs. Plus, some of those stay-at-home tech names we were talking about, ServiceNow, Citrix, Teladoc, those stocks are sharply lower, weighing on that sector. Healthcare, the one sector that's down. Over the last 5 days, you were making a very interesting nuanced point earlier, John, about the idea that we don't have to put cyclical stocks and tech stocks in 2 different baskets, that we can sort of combine them in some ways. Take a look at this. Energy is the top sector, then the financials, then you have communication services. Those are the mega cap stocks, and then tech. These are all among the top sectors on the week, sort of a just right rally right now.
Abby, thank you. Bit of breaking news. Just want to bring you this headline. Won't come as a surprise. Largely well flagged and well reported ahead of time. The US proposing a ban on menthol-flavored cigarettes. That headline just crossing the Bloomberg terminal right now. Coming up, the market-moving events you need to be watching. That'll be next in our trading diary. From New York City, record highs on the S&P 500. We advance almost 0.7%. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Generation's biggest problem.
Climate change is happening.
And the world's most innovative solutions.
Transport, industry, buildings, electricity, all of those things.
Everything you need to know about our changing environment. The politics of global warming.
We can and we will deal with climate change.
In the fight against climate change, Bloomberg Green has you covered.
Right now, about half of U.S. households invest. We'd like to get that number up to 95+%. Investing should be as ubiquitous as shopping online. It should just be something that people do.
Record highs again in America. In New York, the equity market up 27 on the S&P 500, up by around about 0.6%. Just blowout numbers from big tech through the week. But execution risk is the key theme at the moment, isn't it? We all know about the great demand. Can we meet it with supply? How many times have I asked that question through the week? It will continue to be the question for this economy, for corporate America, for the months and quarters to come. Let's get you the trading diary, what you need to be watching through the rest of this week over the next 24 hours and into the weekend. The president promoting his new spending plan later today in Atlanta. Fed President John Williams discussing financial regulation, then the big one later after the close. After the bell, Amazon reporting earnings. Rounding out the week on Friday with US core PCE plus personal income and spending numbers. From New York City for our audience worldwide, that does it for me. Let's check out the price action for you. As we run you through the first 30 minutes of trading in America, equities doing nicely at all-time highs. Do not take your eye off the Treasury market. Records in equities, but yields breaking out this week through 160 and then a pump higher a little bit earlier again. If you switch up the board and take a look at 10s, your 10-year yield in America through 160 at 167.89 and up 7 basis points on the day. From New York City, this was the Countdown to the Open. Continue the conversation on Twitter at Ferro TV. This is Bloomberg.
BSO Now is your online home for brand new Boston Symphony Orchestra and Boston Pops performances. Discover new releases each week that include behind-the-scenes storytelling with conductors including music director Andres Nelsons, guest composers and musicians, plus critically acclaimed archival concerts and more. Visit bso.org/now, where the music plays on. BSO season sponsored by Bank of America.
Months after Hurricane Maria, Puerto Rico is still in peril. Huge swaths of the island are still without power, running water, or access to medical care. Experts estimate that it will take years before these services are restored island-wide. Much of the blame has been placed on FEMA for a slow response in comparison to recent disasters on the mainland. But recovery from a disaster of this complexity and scale has proven more challenging than anyone anticipated. And filling the gaps between an overextended public sector and a suffering populace falls on the private citizens. Robert Anderson is a Puerto Rico resident of 4 years.
The eye of the storm came in south of El Yunque, swept up towards San Juan, and out to Arecibo. Everything on the right-hand side is what we call the dirty side of the storm.
This isn't his first time in a disaster zone. With a military and telecom background, Anderson worked on repairing damaged cell phone towers in New Orleans after Hurricane Katrina. Some might be tempted to label him a disaster capitalist, seeking lucrative government contracts for his expertise. But as Anderson finds himself in the middle of a humanitarian crisis, he and his associates are developing a variety of pro bono recovery projects that target the island's hardest hit areas.
I see two Puerto Ricos. We're here in San Juan. They have telecommunications restored. They may or may not have power, but basic services are in place. They're able to get food. They're able to buy things. They're surviving. And when you look outside of the San Juan area, you can go 15 minutes from here and find areas that are devastated. I'm working on the devastated side.
Today, he's put together a boots-on-the-ground mission to provide medical care to some of the island's most isolated and vulnerable residents. Steve Berenbaum is one of Anderson's business associates. He offered an extra car and a set of hands.
So we received an initial report from a nurse that was out in the area. We're headed to the northeast region of Utuado for some people that are in need of urgent medical assistance.
Dr. Sally Priester is a physician from San Juan. She filled a van with medical supplies at her own expense and brought along a team of nurses. Google Maps estimated our first destination to be a 90-minute drive. But it didn't account for obstacles like this. Our first stop was the home of an 82-year-old blind Vietnam veteran. His roof was blown off by the storm, and he's been living alone in a back shed for nearly 2 months.
His cane actually got broken in the storm, so he's limited mobility. He has a number of medical ailments. Dr. Priester's having a look at him. We called the VA. They're going to get him set up with what he needs, get him stabilized so he can then be transported either to an evacuation center or off the island. It's when the chain gets broken, when those families that are connected to them leave the island or take off, these guys get left at the end of the road, and it's tough.
FEMA was not officially part of Robert's team, and their arrival caught everyone by surprise. Their job here was to survey and report back to their superiors, and did not come with medical aid of any kind.
People think that FEMA is there to hand out bottles of water. It's not what they do. FEMA has a role to play. They have a very specific role. They bring in ships, they bring in airplanes, they bring in tractor trailers with pallets of things. But they're a big machine, and there's gaps in that thing. And you're seeing one of the gaps here, and we help fill that role. These guys are in a bad situation before, and now they're struggling for real basic things. One of the risks that you run is people going from fear to hopelessness. Those are the folks that we're trying to reach.
And how are they reached? How are they even found?
Word of mouth, mostly.
And what's your role in all this?
Ghost in the machine. I'm lucky enough to be able to communicate with folks in FEMA, the state of Puerto Rico.
For a ghost, Robert makes his presence well known. Not only was he the de facto leader of the mission, now with FEMA in tow, he created his own maps to survey storm damage.
So we're right here.
And delivered them to FEMA HQ free of charge.
I have pretty good reach.
Perhaps that's how he managed to earn himself a coveted FEMA badge without actually working for them. And it's these relationships that allow him to operate more efficiently than an NGO or a government agency.
We're able to resolve problems at a different level.
Our next stop was on a mountaintop, a family of 11 struggling to care for their special needs brother in what was left of their house.
Probably we are the first health team to come and visit this family.
Muy bien, todo muy bien.
The patient has Down syndrome. He is all day in bed. The difficulty with this is the patient cannot be alone. The most important thing is that you need to take care of the chronic disease besides disability, because they have been not going to a doctor, and no doctor has come in here yet.
So we need a refill of this medication.
After maybe 54 days, it's not getting better. And the only way that you can be able to see that is coming to the ground, drive, and see the people and talk to the people.
You can see San Juan from here, but you can't get there. It's like the Emerald City.
On this stop, we caught word that a man living alone at the edge of the jungle was in need of care.
So we decided to take a little detour, come up here and check out and see what's going on. One of the challenges is to find those people that are at the end of these roads that need help.
¿Pero por qué estás solo? ¿Por qué estás por acá tan solo? I'm asking about why he's alone right here. He said things of life happens. Yeah, I'm here by myself. So ¿dónde vive acá? En la parte de...
This is not a job. To do this, you need to have passion for what you can do. You're not going to get paid.
It's said in disaster response and emergency response that the real first responders are your neighbors. You don't need to wait for a lucrative FEMA contract to go out and do good and to help the community.
And do you feel like you're making a difference?
Lives you touch and people that you can affect. I don't really think about it in those terms.
But why do you do it?
It helps me sleep at night. I think it's as much for the people that are going out to help and do things as it is for the people that you affect.
Whether out of altruism, or the lure of a paid gig, or some mixture of the two, Anderson hopes to stay here to help shape Puerto Rico's future.
Puerto Rico's essentially been a colony for 400 years. It was treated poorly by the Spanish. It was not treated well by the United States when they first got here. Puerto Rico can continue in the way that it's always been, or Puerto Rico can rebuild itself like nothing that's ever been. And we have to do everything we can to make that real. That's the bottom line.
When I met him first online, I found him to be really sweet. I think I was the one who was talking for an hour. He was just listening.
When we met, I saw her. She was beautiful, intelligent, and kind, which was, something that I was looking for.
Anshu and Sumit are one of about 12 million couples that get married in India every year. Unlike their parents' generation, they're not from two close villages, but from two cities on opposite sides of the country. And their love didn't start through community matchmaking, marriage brokers, or classified ads in newspapers, but began online.
So we met through jeevansathi.com. So it's basically an online portal where we have detailed profile of different grooms and brides.
It makes a lot of remote profiles who are located in distant areas more accessible.
Thanks to growing internet and smartphone usage, matrimony websites and apps in India are starting to disrupt the matchmaking industry. More and more people are finding their partners at the click of a mouse. jeevansathi.com, where Anshu and Sumit met, is one of the biggest players. Young Indians looking for love set up profiles including their caste and horoscope, but their criteria for choosing spouses appears to be changing.
We have seen the shift from, traditional caste community conservative parameters to something like which is more focused on education.
More input than previous generations.
We looked up to be with each other.
Time flies when you're in love. The massive event usually lasts 3 days, has various ceremonies and celebrations, and involves the entire two families and hundreds of guests.
Wedding brigade, and they helped us finalize the venue, and it makes the search faster and efficient.